The ancient sentinels of Redwood National Park, colossal trees that scraped the perpetually misty skies of Northern California, stood as monuments to time, their immense trunks shrouded in an almost sacred silence. This was not merely a forest, it was a cathedral of wood and fog, a vast untamed wilderness where the air itself seemed to hum with forgotten histories. The earthy scent of damp soil, rich with centuries of fallen needles, mingled with the sharp, clean perfume of ancient bark, creating an olfactory tapestry as intricate as the forest floor. Filtered light, diffused by the impossibly high canopy, painted shifting patterns on the fern-covered ground, casting the undergrowth in a perpetual twilight. The hushed sounds, the distant cry of a hawk, the rustle of unseen creatures, the gentle drip of condensation from enormous branches, contributed to a pervasive sense of untouched grandeur. This sublime wilderness was the dominion of Elias Vance, a park ranger in his late 30s, and it was a place he knew not just intimately, but as if it were an extension of his own quiet soul. Elias was a man of lean build, his frame sculpted by countless miles of hiking through challenging terrain. His face, weathered by sun and wind, was often a study in quiet contemplation. His eyes, the color of deep forest moss, missing nothing. He was unassuming, a stark contrast to the boisterous tourists and ambitious colleagues he sometimes encountered. What set Elias apart was his extraordinary, almost intuitive observation skill. He possessed an uncanny ability to notice the smallest anomalies in flora and fauna, a displaced pebble on a game trail that shouldn't be there, an unusual scuff mark on ancient bark that spoke of non-native movement, a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in the intricate symphony of bird calls that signaled an unseen disruption. This heightened perception wasn't learned in a classroom, it was honed during countless solitary treks through the deepest parts of the wilderness, a lifetime spent listening, watching, and absorbing the silent language of the forest. It was a skill he'd inherited, in a way, from his grandfather, a grizzled veteran Forest Service ranger who had filled Elias's childhood with tales of local cryptids and forgotten Native American lore, stories that had woven themselves into the fabric of Elias's understanding of the natural world. His profound passion for the park often isolated him from his more conventional colleagues, who saw him as eccentric, often retreating into his own world of detailed observation. They appreciated his dedication, but often found him a bit too intense, too absorbed in the quiet mysteries of the woods. Elias, however, found solace and profound meaning in this solitude. His rustic cabin, nestled on the park's northern edge, was sparsely furnished, a reflection of his simple, unadorned life. It was here, surrounded by maps, field guides, and the occasional hand-carved wooden bird, that he truly felt at peace. His daily routine was a meditative practice rising with the first hint of dawn, preparing a simple breakfast, and then setting out into the labyrinthine trails. His patrols weren't just duties, they were pilgrimages, each step a deeper immersion into the living, breathing entity that was Redwood National Park. He knew every twist of every trail, every ancient tree, every hidden spring, his internal compass as finely tuned as any navigational instrument, his internal world filled with detailed ecological observations, speculative theories about unexplained phenomena, and a deep, philosophical reverence for nature's untold secrets, was far richer and more complex than his quiet exterior suggested. One brisk autumn morning, on a routine patrol along a rarely used deer trail that hugged the winding course of Redwood Creek, Elias encountered a scene that perfectly encapsulated his inherent compassion. He spotted a flash of white, stark against the emerald green of the underbrush. A young bald eagle, its magnificent wings tangled in a discarded length of fishing line, thrashed desperately near a remote, pristine stream. The national bird, a symbol of freedom, was snared, its struggles only tightening the insidious knot around its powerful leg. Panic flared in the bird's golden eyes, its sharp beak snapping in terror. This was a protected species, its well-being paramount. Elias moved slowly, cautiously, his movements deliberate and unthreatening. He knelt down, speaking to the agitated bird in low, calming tones, his voice a gentle murmur against the rushing water. The eagle squawked, its talons flexing instinctively. With practiced gentleness and infinite patience, Elias began to meticulously work on the tangled monofilament. The line was thin, almost invisible, biting deep into the bird's flesh. He risked a painful bite or a raking talon scratch, but he never hesitated. His fingers, calloused from years of outdoor work, deftly untangled the invisible threads, inch by agonizing inch. After what felt like an eternity, the last loop loosened. Elias gently supported the bird for a moment, inspecting its leg for injury, before releasing it. With a powerful beat of its enormous wings, the bald eagle soared upwards, circling once above the towering redwoods before disappearing into the mist-shrouded canopy, a silent testament to Elias's profound empathy and unwavering commitment to every life, great or small, within his charge. He watched it go, a quiet satisfaction warming him, seeking no recognition, simply fulfilling his deep-seated duty to the wilderness. This selfless act, unseen by any human eye, was Elias's save the cat moment, cementing the reader's empathy and establishing him as a protagonist worthy of rooting for. Presiding over Elias's world, both literally and figuratively, was Randall Cole, his direct supervisor and the acting regional director of the National Park Service for the Northern California sector. Cole was a man in his late 40s, always impeccably dressed, even in the rugged confines of the park. His crisp, starched uniform, devoid of any creasing, stood in stark contrast to Elias's worn, practical gear, a visual metaphor for their differing philosophies. Cole was a career bureaucrat, a man driven by budget spreadsheets, standardized operational procedures, and, above all, by maintaining a problem-free public image for the Park Service. His eye was firmly fixed on a promotion to a national directorship, and any ripple in the calm surface of his jurisdiction was a personal affront. He dismissed anything that deviated from established protocols and widely accepted scientific consensus. To Cole, unusual sightings were not opportunities for discovery, but potential liabilities, a drain on precious resources, or worse, a public relations nightmare. He viewed folklore and local legends as unprofessional, even detrimental, to the park's carefully cultivated reputation for pristine, manageable wilderness. He saw science as a rigid set of facts, immutable and easily categorized, with no room for the unknown or the unproven. He was the quintessential antagonist type B, misunderstood, arrogant entity, whose arrogance stemmed from an inflexible adherence to conventional wisdom, a deep-seated fear of anything that could disrupt his carefully ordered world, and a dismissive attitude towards anything unproven or unconventional. His interactions with Elias were characterized by increasing, thinly veiled frustration over Elias's detailed, sometimes unusually poetic, incident reports, which often included observations Cole deemed unverifiable, anecdotal, or downright imaginative. Cole saw Elias as a liability, an anomalous, unpredictable element in his perfectly ordered, promotion-worthy world. He tolerated Elias only because his dedication kept the remote sectors of the park running smoothly, but he harbored a quiet disdain for the ranger's eccentricities, always waiting for the moment Elias would cross a line. The ancient redwoods of the Whispering Hollows stood as giants, their immense crowns lost in the perpetual mist, their lower trunks draped in a tapestry of moss and ferns. This rarely visited section of Redwood National Park, a labyrinth of gnarled, centuries-old trees and perpetually damp earth, was Elias Vance's favorite haunt. It was here that the silence was deepest, the sense of untouched wild most profound. On this particular Tuesday, however, an uncanny stillness had settled over the forest, a strange atmospheric pressure that pressed down on Elias, making the very air feel heavy, expectant. The usual symphony of birdsong was muted, replaced by an unsettling quiet that frayed at the edges of his senses. He moved with his customary quiet grace, his worn boots barely disturbing the rich, dark soil. His eyes, ever watchful, scanned the undergrowth, seeking out the subtle signs of life he had learned to read so well. Suddenly, a sound. It began as a low, resonant hum, not of insects or wind, but something that vibrated through the earth itself, traveling up through the soles of his feet. It intensified, growing into a complex series of high-pitched clicks, almost like sonar, echoing off the colossal trunks around him. Elias froze, his hand instinctively going to the robust digital camera slung over his shoulder, a device he rarely used but always carried for documenting unusual flora or geological formations. This was unlike anything he had ever heard. Then, he saw it. Not with absolute clarity, not a distinct, definable form, but a fleeting, massive, and undeniably unfamiliar presence. It was colossal, a shimmering distortion in the air, a ripple of pure energy rather than solid mass, moving with impossible speed and utter silence through the densest part of the undergrowth. There was no rustle of leaves, no snapping of twigs, no displaced branches, just a sudden, powerful displacement of air and a brief, iridescent flash of something that wasn't light, but felt like it. It vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving behind only an echoing silence and a lingering sense of profound anomaly. Elias stood transfixed, his breath caught in his throat. His scientific training, honed by years of rigorous observation, screamed that this was unprecedented. His intuition, sharpened by a lifetime in the wilderness and the half-forgotten cryptid tales of his grandfather, told him it was profoundly real, a living enigma. He approached the spot where the distortion had vanished, his heart pounding in his chest. There, pressed into the damp earth, were tracks. Not paw prints, not hoof prints, but peculiar. Elongated depressions, unlike any known animal. They were too large for anything recorded, yet too shallow to be made by something heavy. And within them, a faint, crystalline residue shimmered for a moment before dissipating like morning mist. Nearby, a single, peculiar feather lay on a patch of moss. It was impossibly light, with a strange, almost metallic sheen that shifted through a spectrum of colors iridescent, yet unlike any avian feather he had ever catalogued, and the moss beneath it, a common variety, seemed to faintly glow with an inner, cool luminescence that pulsed subtly. Elias knew, with an unshakable certainty, that he had just encountered something beyond the known biological record. His old, rugged digital camera, usually used for documenting unusual tree formations, felt suddenly inadequate. He raised it, his hands shaking slightly, and managed to snap a single, blurry, partial photo of the last fading, shimmering distortion just before it vanished completely into the shadows. The experience left him profoundly shaken, challenging the very foundations of the natural world he thought he knew so intimately. He felt a primal sense of awe, but also a deep-seated fear of the unknown, of what this discovery could mean. Elias returned to his cabin, the strange feather carefully wrapped in a handkerchief, the glowing moss stored in a sealed jar, the blurry image flickering on his camera's small screen. He spent hours, then days, in a feverish state of analysis. He meticulously studied the feather under a magnifying glass, compared the track patterns to every field guide he owned, listened to the eerie audio recording of the hum and clicks over and over again, trying to match it to any known wildlife. His scientific training demanded empirical proof, but his intuition, deepened by years of absorbing the subtle energies of the forest, screamed that this was an undeniable, groundbreaking truth. He struggled with the inherent conflict between his desire to report the truth, a truth that could redefine biology, change humanity's understanding of the planet, and the absolute certainty of ridicule from Randall Cole, and, by extension, the broader scientific community. He knew Cole would dismiss it outright, would see it as a lunatic's fantasy. Yet, Elias's unwavering commitment to scientific integrity, his deep, almost spiritual respect for the unknown, and his protective instincts for the park's true wonders compelled him. He could not, in good conscience, bury this. He meticulously compiled a formal, detailed report, far exceeding standard protocol, writing late into the night. He included his blurry photo, carefully described the strange feather still in its sealed bag, detailed notes on the luminous moss's properties, and even attached the raw audio recording of the strange vocalizations. He documented every observation, every environmental anomaly, every minute detail with scientific precision, hoping the sheer weight of his data would somehow overcome the fantastical nature of his claim. He believed that the truth, no matter how unbelievable, had a right to be heard. Cole's reaction was swift, brutal, and designed for maximum humiliation. He summoned Elias to his office the very next morning, but it was no private meeting. Several other rangers were present, a small, informal tribunal. Among them was Supervisor Miller, a younger, ambitious colleague known for his sycophantic loyalty to Cole and his thinly veiled disdain for Elias's peculiarities. Miller's presence solidified the public nature of Elias's impending dressing down. Cole sat behind his polished desk, the offending report spread before him like a criminal indictment. He barely looked up as Elias entered, his face set in a mask of contempt. "Elias," Cole began, his voice dripping with condescension, "this report is an embarrassment. Unidentified species. In my park." He picked up the bagged feather between two fingers, sneering. "This is a common raven feather, discolored by mold, and this luminous moss is bioluminescent fungi. Nothing more. And this photograph." He held up the blurry photo, shaking his head slowly. "A trick of light. Or perhaps, Elias, a trick of the mind." He dropped the feather onto the desk with a dismissive flick. Cole launched into a scathing lecture on professionalism, maintaining credibility with the public, and the reputation of the National Park Service during a critical period of congressional funding review. He spoke of the irresponsible nature of unsubstantiated claims and the damage caused by sensationalism. Other rangers, exchanging knowing glances, snickered quietly. Whispers of crazy ranger and Bigfoot hunter began to circulate among the park staff, quickly spilling over into the small local town where Elias was already considered an eccentric. Elias felt a profound sense of isolation, betrayal, and deep, burning injustice. His truth, his undeniable experience, was being twisted, ridiculed, and dismissed as a figment of his imagination. Cole, determined to silence Elias and preempt any potential scandal that could derail his regional director promotion, finally leaned forward, his voice dropping to a low, menacing tone. "Elias, I'm giving you an opportunity to correct this lapse in judgment. Retract this ridiculous report. Admit to a misidentification, a momentary aberration. Sign this non-disclosure agreement, and cease all talk of unidentified species. If you do this, we can let this slide. If you refuse—" Cole paused, his eyes narrowing. "Then you face immediate termination for gross unprofessional conduct, dissemination of unsubstantiated claims, and jeopardizing park credibility." Elias stood motionless, his gaze unwavering as he met Cole's hostile stare. His heart ached at the thought of losing his connection to the park, to the very essence of his life's work. But he knew, with an absolute, undeniable certainty, the truth of what he had seen. The humming vibration, the shimmering distortion, the peculiar tracks, the iridescent feather. They were real. His quiet demeanor hardened into a granite-like resolve, an unyielding core of integrity. "I cannot retract the truth, sir," Elias stated, his voice calm but firm, resonating with a quiet dignity that surprised even Cole. "And I will not deny what I witnessed. My duty is to the park, and to the truth, not to convenience or bureaucratic expedience." Cole's face flushed crimson with rage. This defiance, this quiet rebellion, was an insubordination he could not tolerate. "Then you're fired, Vance," Cole spat, his voice clipped and final. "Effective immediately. Pack your things. Hand over your uniform, your badge, Your access keycards. You are no longer a ranger here. Elias felt the cold weight of the words, but they only served to solidify his resolve. He looked at Cole, then at the other rangers. Their faces a mix of discomfort and feigned indifference. He felt stripped bare, his identity as a park ranger torn away. But as he turned to leave Cole's office, a pariah in the very place he cherished most, a burning conviction filled him. This refusal was his point of no return. He had chosen integrity and scientific truth over his job, his reputation, and his entire way of life. He was now irrevocably committed to proving what he saw, because the truth, to Elias Vance, was non-negotiable. He left the park office, a disgraced ranger, but with a quiet, unyielding fire in his soul that would not be extinguished. Fired. The word echoed in Elias's mind, a hollow, bitter pronouncement that severed his ties to the land he loved. Stripped of his uniform, his badge, his very identity as a park ranger, he was now a pariah in the tight-knit community of Redwood National Park. The whispers of crazy ranger and Bigfoot hunter followed him like a persistent shadow, amplified by Randall Cole's subtle machinations. Yet, far from breaking him, this ostracization only solidified Elias's resolve. His connection to the wilderness wasn't defined by a uniform or a paycheck. It was woven into the very fiber of his being. The truth of what he had seen, that shimmering distortion in the whispering hollows, burned brighter than ever. Now unburdened by bureaucratic protocols, Elias dedicated himself entirely to understanding the enigma. His solitary cabin became a makeshift research station, strewn with detailed maps, hastily drawn sketches of the tracks he'd found, and the precious, peculiar feather and glowing moss. He spent weeks, then months, returning repeatedly to the whispering hollows. He moved with the quiet grace of a ghost, his deep knowledge of the park's hidden trails and rarely used game paths allowing him to navigate unseen, a shadow amidst the ancient trees. He wasn't just a former ranger. He was a natural historian, an obsessive detective seeking the most elusive of truths. His investigation was meticulous, far more rigorous than any official park survey. He installed motion-activated trail cameras in remote, strategic locations, camouflaged amongst the ferns and moss. He meticulously documented environmental shifts, noting minute changes in temperature, humidity, and the strange, almost electric quality of the air that sometimes permeated the hollows. He tracked subtle anomalies, unusual patterns of dew on certain leaves, strange, faint impressions on rocks that hinted at immense pressure, and the reappearance of the faint bioluminescent moss in new areas. Slowly, painstakingly, he began to piece together a fragmented picture. He collected more substantial, though still inconclusive, evidence clearer, though still partial. Tracks that showed an impossible stride, recordings of the strange, rhythmic clicks and resonant hums, now slightly clearer, and samples of plant life that showed unusual cellular structures in the areas where the shimmering presence had been felt. Each piece of evidence, small on its own, contributed to an increasingly compelling, if still scientifically unprovable, mosaic. Elias knew, however, that his personal conviction and collected data, no matter how compelling to him, meant nothing without scientific validation. He needed a mind steeped in the rigors of academia, someone capable of interpreting his unconventional findings within a scientific framework. He needed an expert, someone whose reputation could lend weight to his seemingly fantastical claims. He thought of Dr. Lena Hansen. Dr. Lena Hansen was a force of nature in the world of evolutionary biology. Based at the prestigious California Academy of Sciences in San Francisco, she was renowned for her brilliant, incisive mind, her unwavering commitment to empirical proof, and her notoriously skeptical nature. She had built her career on disproving sensational claims, meticulously dismantling shaky theories with cold, hard data. Her dismissal of anything lacking absolute empirical proof was legendary, making her, paradoxically, Elias's ideal, yet most challenging potential ally. Elias, operating with extreme caution, decided on an anonymous approach first. He compiled a small, carefully selected dossier of his most intriguing findings, a high-resolution scan of the peculiar feather, detailed photographs of the glowing moss, a spectral analysis of the strange sound recording, and a meticulously annotated map of the anomaly sightings in the Whispering Hollows. He sent it to her anonymously, via a burner email account, hoping her scientific curiosity would outweigh her innate skepticism. A week passed, then another. Elias felt a familiar knot of dread tighten in his stomach. He checked the obscure online forums where unusual biological findings were sometimes discussed. Nothing. Finally, a curt, dismissive email arrived in his anonymous inbox from Dr. Hansen's official university address. "Dear Correspondent," it read, "while your enthusiasm for natural observation is noted, the data provided is inconclusive at best, and frankly, falls well within the parameters of known natural phenomena or misidentification. My research focus remains on verifiable, empirical evidence. I advise you to submit your findings to appropriate, peer-reviewed journals, should you gather more substantial proof." The email was polite, professional, and utterly dismissive. Elias felt a profound disappointment, but it also spurred him to a desperate measure. He composed a new email, this time revealing his identity, detailing his background as a park ranger, his recent termination, and the exact coordinates of his most compelling observations. He included a direct, personal plea, emphasizing the unusual nature of the environmental conditions and the sheer impossibility of what he had witnessed. He knew this was a shot in the dark, a reckless move, but he was out of options. To his astonishment, Dr. Hansen replied within hours. The tone was still guarded, but there was a flicker of something new irritation. Yes, but also a hint of intrigued exasperation. "Mr. Vance," her email began, "your recent professional difficulties notwithstanding, the sheer meticulousness of your unconventional data collection has piqued my interest, if only to definitively debunk it. I rarely engage with such anecdotal claims, but your detailed methodology is unusual. I am willing to meet, strictly off the record, at a neutral location. You have exactly 1 hour of my time. No grand pronouncements, just the data. If you waste my time, consider this my last communication." She provided a secluded coffee shop address in Eureka, a coastal town just outside the park, and a specific time. Elias arrived early, his heart pounding. Lena Hansen, a woman of sharp intellect and piercing blue eyes, was already there, sipping black coffee. Her expression a mix of weary skepticism and cautious interest. He laid out his expanded dossier clearer, though still partial, photographs of the unique tracks, a small, sealed vial containing a sample of the faintly glowing moss, and the refined audio recording of the resonant hums and clicks. He spoke calmly, without sensationalism, detailing his observations, his voice resonating with the quiet authority of someone who had spent a lifetime listening to the wilderness. He described the atmospheric shifts, the way the forest fell silent, the feeling of something ancient and powerful moving unseen. Lena listened, initially with folded arms and a skeptical frown. She examined the photos under a pocket magnifier, ran the audio recording through a spectrum analyzer on her laptop. She picked up the vial of moss, turning it over in her hand, her brow furrowed in thought. The moss did glow, faintly, inexplicably. The audio signature was unusual, defying easy categorization. Her scientific mind, trained to dissect and dismiss, found itself grappling with a gnawing inconsistency. The data, though incomplete, was undeniably intriguing. Elias, the disgraced ranger, was no charlatan. He was a meticulous, passionate observer. Her skepticism, though deeply ingrained, began to crack, replaced by a profound, if unwelcome, scientific curiosity. "Mr. Vance," she finally said, her voice slow, This is highly unconventional, and frankly, unbelievable. Yet your methodology, the sheer volume of detailed, consistent observations, It's peculiar. I cannot, in good conscience, dismiss it outright without a closer look." She paused, her eyes meeting his. "I will grant you this: the anomaly, if it is an anomaly, warrants further investigation. I will agree to a clandestine, off-the-books research trip with you into the Whispering Hollows. No official university endorsement, no public records. If we find nothing, or if your claims prove to be the result of misidentification, my involvement ends. Is that understood?" Elias nodded, a wave of relief washing over him. He had found his first, reluctant ally. Dr. Lena Hansen was the helper, whose scientific curiosity, though tinged with skepticism, made her Elias's crucial partner in this improbable quest. Their first expedition into the Whispering Hollows together was a tense dance between Elias's intuitive knowledge and Lena's rigorous scientific method. Elias led her to the precise locations where he had experienced the most intense phenomena. Lena deployed an array of sophisticated, portable scientific instruments: infrared cameras, sensitive acoustic detectors, electromagnetic field meters, and atmospheric sensors. For days, they found nothing definitive. Lena's skepticism, though dulled, began to reassert itself. "Elias," she said, her voice tinged with exasperation, "I appreciate your conviction, but without a direct observation, or even consistent, unexplainable readings, this is just a beautiful forest, a beautiful..." Then, it happened. They were deep within a particularly ancient grove, the air unusually still, when the subtle hum Elias had heard before began to vibrate through the earth. Lena's instruments spiked, her EMF meter shrieked, its needle jumping wildly. Her thermal camera showed a sudden, localized drop in temperature, inexplicable in the warm forest. Then, in a tense, fleeting moment, she witnessed a similar, though still partial, manifestation of the creature that Elias had seen months ago. A sudden, powerful displacement of air, a shimmering distortion that seemed to bend the light around it, followed by a brief, incredibly intense flash of an unusual, deep violet light emanating from the air itself. A distinct, non-animal sound, a complex series of clicks and whistles that defied any known classification, filled the air, resonating in their bones. It lasted only seconds before vanishing, leaving behind the lingering scent of ozone and something else, something subtly sweet and alien. Lena didn't fully see the creature, but she experienced enough: the impossible energy readings, the light distortion, the unique sound signature to shake her skepticism to its core. Her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and profound scientific wonder, she stared at Elias. What was that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The experience had transformed her from a disbeliever into a profoundly disturbed but utterly intrigued scientist. She knew now, with chilling certainty, that something truly unknown was at play. Meanwhile, Randall Cole was not idle. Whispers of Elias's continued delusions and, more disturbingly, his association with a respected scientist like Dr. Lena Hansen had reached his ears through his network of informants within the Park Service and local community. Cole saw this as a direct and dangerous threat. A respected academic investigating Elias's crazy stories could lead to a public relations nightmare, potentially jeopardizing his promotion and tarnishing the Park Service's carefully managed image. He needed to actively discredit Elias, and now, Lena, before they gained any real traction. Cole swiftly implemented countermeasures. He leaked fabricated stories to local media outlets in Eureka and Crescent City, subtly painting Elias as unstable, obsessed with paranormal phenomena, and a disgruntled former employee seeking revenge. The headlines were subtle but damaging. Former park rangers' wild claims continue. Scientist reportedly collaborating with discredited ex-employee on Bigfoot hunt. He increased ranger patrols in the Whispering Hollows, ostensibly for conservation efforts and visitor safety. but truly to hinder Elias and Lena's movements, planting misinformation among the Rangers about wild goose chases and unfounded rumors. He even covertly reached out to Lena's university, making discreet inquiries about her research, subtly questioning her unconventional research interests and hinting at ethical concerns regarding her collaboration with a discredited individual. This was the antagonist's direct action, demonstrating Cole's escalating fear, his determination to control the narrative, and his willingness to undermine a respected scientist to protect his own career and the facade of order he had meticulously built. The gauntlet had been thrown. The brief, shimmering glimpse of the unknown creature had irrevocably changed Dr. Lena Hansen. Her rigorous scientific skepticism, once an impenetrable fortress, had been breached, replaced by a consuming scientific urgency. She was no longer just curious. She was driven. However, the academic world was a slow-moving, cautious beast. Back at the California Academy of Sciences, Lena found herself facing escalating pressure. Her initial cautious attempts to present the anomalous data from the Whispering Hollows were met with polite skepticism from her colleagues, then with thinly veiled suspicion from the university administration. Randall Cole's subtle inquiries, hinting at Elias's unstable mental state and questioning Lena's unconventional research interests, had begun to bear fruit. The dean of research had quietly suggested she focus on her established grants, reminding her that speculative biology was a risky endeavor, especially when associated with discredited individuals. The scientific community, though intrigued by the tantalizing, inconclusive snippets she cautiously released, remained largely skeptical. They dismissed her early findings, the peculiar EMF spikes, the unidentifiable acoustic signatures, the odd plant samples, as anomalies, equipment malfunctions, or simply misinterpreted data. Elias's name, forever tarnished by Cole's campaign, hung like an albatross around her neck, making any direct public association a professional risk for her. They both felt the clock ticking. Without undeniable, incontrovertible proof, their reputations, and Elias's chance at vindication, would be destroyed. The weight of this silent clock pressed down on them, a constant, gnawing anxiety. Elias, operating with a desperate urgency, understood the stakes better than anyone. He spent his days and nights poring over every shred of data he had collected, cross-referencing it with historical weather patterns, lunar cycles, even ancient Native American oral traditions about the spirit walkers of the deep woods. His cabin was a war room, filled with charts, maps, and cryptic notes. He analyzed the subtle shifts in atmospheric pressure, the specific frequency of the creature's hums, the rare appearance of certain bioluminescent fungi. And then, late one stormy night, hunched over his worn desk, a surge of adrenaline shot through him. He saw it. A pattern. He discovered a specific set of environmental conditions, a convergence of high barometric pressure, a waning gibbous moon, and a unique atmospheric electrical charge that seemed to predict the creature's behavior and potential appearance. He also deciphered a peculiar signature, a unique, low-frequency energetic fluctuation, almost a resonance, or a distinct, undulating bioluminescent trace that consistently indicated the creature's presence. This breakthrough wasn't just a hunch. It was a verifiable, repeatable pattern, an almost mathematical certainty of where and when to find the elusive being. This discovery gave them a precise window and location to seek undeniable proof. He immediately called Lena, his voice raspy with exhaustion but vibrant with excitement. "Lena, I've got it. The convergence. The signature. It's tied to the lunar cycle and the atmospheric pressure. There's a window, a narrow one, and it's happening tonight, in the heart of the Hollows." Lena, despite her academic reservations, felt a jolt of thrill. This was the breakthrough they needed. However, Randall Cole was not one to be outmaneuvered. His network of informants, particularly a disgruntled junior ranger who resented Elias's old popularity, had relayed whispers of Elias and Lena's renewed, frantic activity. Cole saw this as a direct, audacious challenge, a final desperate attempt to undermine his authority. He moved swiftly, decisively. Using his interim regional director powers, he orchestrated a public safety alert for the entire Whispering Hollow section of the park. Officially, it was closed off under the guise of extreme weather warnings. A sudden, unseasonal blizzard was supposedly sweeping in, though the sky above them was merely overcast and unprecedented rare wildlife protection efforts. Unofficially, this closure specifically targeted Elias and Lena's predicted location. He deployed additional park rangers, including a stern, no-nonsense patrol led by Supervisor Miller, with explicit orders to actively patrol and deter any unauthorized entry into the hollows. He subtly instructed them to find and remove any individuals found in the restricted area, implicitly giving them carte blanche to deal with Elias and Lena. "We cannot have rogue elements jeopardizing public safety," he had told Miller, his eyes cold and unwavering. "This is about maintaining order." As if in league with Cole's machinations, the wilderness itself became a dangerous adversary. Just hours before Elias and Lena were due to embark, a severe, unexpected weather front truly did roll in. Not a blizzard, but a torrential downpour unlike anything Elias had seen in years. It was a deluge that turned the already treacherous terrain into a muddy, slippery nightmare. Swollen creeks became raging torrents, ancient paths dissolved into muddy slides, and the dense canopy, usually a shield, now channeled water into relentless sheets. Visibility dropped to almost zero as a thick, oppressive fog, carried on the leading edge of the storm, descended, turning the familiar forest into an alien, disorienting labyrinth. The wind howled through the ancient trees, sounding like tormented spirits. Elias and Lena stood at the edge of the now restricted zone, the driving rain plastering their hair to their faces, the wind tearing at their rain gear. Ahead lay the forbidden Whispering Hollows, shrouded in an impenetrable wall of mist and driving rain. Behind them lay Cole's vigilant patrols, their flashlights occasionally piercing the gloom. They were trapped between a relentless adversary and a wrathful nature. "This is insane! Elias!" Lena yelled over the roar of the wind, her voice strained. "The conditions are impossible. And Cole's patrols. He's actively hunting us." Elias looked at her, his face grim but resolute. "This is our only chance. Lena, the window closes by dawn. If we wait, we might not get another for months. Maybe years, and he'll have tightened his net." He pointed into the impenetrable fog. "The creature, it will be out there. I feel it." They made their decision. They would race against the elements, against Cole's relentless interference, and against their shrinking window of opportunity. They decided their only option was a perilous, clandestine expedition into the very heart of the Whispering Hollows during the predicted window. Their goal to capture incontrovertible, high-resolution footage or viable biological samples of the elusive creature. They were utterly alone, cut off from outside help, relying solely on Elias's deep, almost innate knowledge of the park's hidden pathways and Lena's cutting-edge scientific expertise. Elias carried a rugged, high-definition night vision camera and a modified sound recorder. Lena carried a portable, highly sensitive sensor array, equipped with a specialized biological scanner she had secretly borrowed from her lab. They plunged into the swirling fog and torrential rain, their flashlights mere pinpricks in the oppressive darkness. Every step was a battle against the elements, slipping on wet roots, battling through dense, thorny undergrowth, navigating swollen streams. The forest seemed to actively resist them, branches clawing, mud sucking at their boots. Distant shouts of "Park Ranger, identify yourself!" from Cole's patrols echoed through the trees, pushing them deeper into the treacherous wilderness. This was the ultimate test, a desperate gambit, where failure meant not just the loss of their careers and their last shred of credibility, but potentially their lives, lost and unmourned in the vast, unforgiving wilderness, with the truth of a new species remaining forever undiscovered. Their every muscle screamed in protest, their lungs burned, but the burning conviction to uncover the truth propelled them forward, deeper into the unknown. The heart of the Whispering Hollows, under the relentless assault of the storm, was a place of primal chaos and ethereal beauty. Elias and Lena, soaked to the bone and shivering, pushed through the torrential downpour, their bodies aching, their muscles screaming in protest. The wind howled through the ancient redwoods, a mournful, disorienting cry that seemed to actively conspire against them. Each step was a treacherous dance on slick, moss-covered rocks and treacherous roots, the mud sucking at their boots with greedy intent. Supervisor Miller's distant shouts, carried on the wind, still echoed through the trees, a constant reminder of the relentless pursuit orchestrated by Randall Cole. But the scientific signature Elias had discovered, the low-frequency resonance, was growing stronger on Lena's portable array, pulling them deeper into the labyrinthine darkness. They finally reached it, a hidden clearing, an almost ethereal space untouched by human disturbance. Even the storm seemed to quiet slightly within its perimeter. Ancient ferns unfurled in delicate patterns, and the towering redwoods formed a natural cathedral ceiling. The air here crackled with a palpable energy, a strange, almost electric hum that resonated in Elias's bones. Lena's instruments shrieked, their readings spiking wildly, confirming their proximity to the source. The light, even through the dense canopy and heavy clouds, seemed to shimmer with an inner luminescence, a soft, otherworldly glow that pulsed faintly. And then, it appeared, not with a sudden, dramatic flourish, but with a gentle unfurling, a soft, slow revelation that was breathtaking in its subtlety. It wasn't a monster, no creature of nightmare, but something breathtakingly beautiful and utterly alien. Its form was fluid, a living sculpture of light and shadow, roughly humanoid in shape but elongated and impossibly graceful, seeming to float rather than walk. Its skin, if it could be called skin, appeared to be composed of countless shimmering, iridescent scales, constantly shifting in color from deep forest greens and blues to flashes of silver and gold, mimicking the filtered light of the forest. Its eyes, large and luminous, were pools of soft, golden light, brimming with an ancient, gentle intelligence. From its back, two delicate, almost translucent wings unfurled slowly, resembling those of a colossal dragonfly, catching the faint, ambient glow of the clearing and reflecting it outwards. It moved with an almost dreamlike fluidity, gliding through the undergrowth without disturbing a single leaf, its movements impossibly silent. It emitted the same complex series of clicks and soft hums Elias had recorded, but now they seemed to form a melodic, almost mournful song, echoing through the sacred grove. This was truly an undiscovered species, magnificent and fragile, a living embodiment of the forest's deepest secrets. It radiated an aura of profound peace and ancient wisdom, a stark contrast to the human chaos that had brought Elias and Lena here. As the creature manifested fully, Elias, his hands steady despite the cold and the pounding of his heart, activated his specialized high-resolution night vision camera. The digital screen came alive with the otherworldly glow of the creature, every shimmering scale, every delicate vein in its wings, rendered in astonishing detail. Beside him, Lena, her scientific skepticism completely obliterated by awe, fumbled with her sophisticated sensor array, desperate to capture irrefutable biological and energetic data. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, calibrating, adjusting, ensuring every possible reading was captured. The creature, however, sensed their presence. Its golden eyes, luminous and intelligent, turned towards them. It paused, its fluid form seeming to flicker, its iridescent scales rippling as if on the verge of vanishing into the ether. For a terrifying beat, a heart-stopping, nin-tho moment, it seemed they would lose their chance. The creature began to slowly recede, its light dimming, its form blurring at the edges. Elias's camera, battered by the rain, suddenly stuttered, its battery indicator flashing a desperate red, threatening to die. Lena's sensors blared a warning, then wavered, her precious biological scanner showing intermittent errors due to the creature's strange energy field. Everything hung in the balance. Years of tireless work. A career ruined. A monumental discovery lost forever. In that critical second, Elias's mind flashed back to a fragmented piece of Native American lore his grandfather had once shared. A story about spirit walkers who responded to certain harmonics, to offerings of pure forest essence, acting on pure intuition, a deep, ancestral connection to the land. Elias quickly unlatched his worn leather pouch. He pulled out a small, intricately carved wooden flute, a gift from his grandfather, and a small, dried piece of chanterelle mushroom, a token from a previous hike, chosen for its earthy purity. He placed the mushroom gently on the forest floor, a silent offering. Then, raising the flute to his lips, he played a simple, haunting melody, a sequence of soft, clear notes, almost an echo of the creature's own clicks and hums. It was a tune of peace, of reverence, an ancient song of connection to the wilderness. The effect was instantaneous and miraculous. The creature, which had been fading, stabilized. Its shimmering form brightened, and its golden eyes fixed on Elias, then on the mushroom. It unfolded its wings fully, a breathtaking display of ethereal beauty, and allowed itself to be fully captured on Elias's camera, its every detail rendered with startling clarity. Then, with a soft, almost imperceptible movement, it hovered over the mushroom, a faint glow emanating from its form, before moving on. As it glided past them, a single, delicate bioluminescent scale, impossibly thin and iridescent, drifted silently from its wing and settled on Lena's outstretched, gloved hand. It pulsed with a gentle, inner light, a tangible, irrefutable piece of evidence. They secured the scale in a sterile container as the creature vanished once more into the deepest part of the hollows, its song fading into the rain. Elias and Lena began their harrowing escape from the park, narrowly evading a final, desperate patrol led by Supervisor Miller, their hearts pounding not just from exertion, but from the magnitude of what they had just witnessed. Back in civilization, Lena worked in a feverish frenzy in her private lab, processing the undeniable evidence, the high-resolution footage from Elias's camera, the detailed biological readings from her sensor array, and the tangible, pulsing scale confirmed it all. The creature was real, and it was unlike anything known to science. She immediately called an emergency press conference, bypassing her skeptical superiors, fueled by the sheer audacity of the discovery and the need to vindicate Elias. The conference room at the California Academy of Sciences was packed with media, scientists, and curious onlookers. Lena, her voice unwavering, projected the stunning footage onto a massive screen. The room fell silent as the ethereal form of the luminary Silvestris forest, Lightbearer, as Lena tentatively named it, glided across the screen, its shimmering scales and translucent wings a breathtaking spectacle. Then came the scientific data, the unique genetic markers from the scale, the precise energetic fluctuations, the acoustic signatures that defied any known classification. The scientific community and the world were stunned. The creature was officially declared a new species, an incredible discovery that rewrote parts of the known biological record, a testament to the fact that even in a seemingly mapped world, wonders still existed. When asked how she made this breakthrough, Lena, with unwavering integrity and a powerful sense of justice, looked directly at the cameras. "This discovery," she declared, her voice ringing with conviction, "is not mine alone. It began with the courage and unparalleled observational skills of a man who was ridiculed, dismissed, and fired for speaking the truth. Park Ranger Elias Vance was the first to see this magnificent creature. His meticulous initial report, dismissed as delusion by his superiors, contained the very first observations of what we now know is Luminaris Silvestris. She then displayed excerpts from Elias's original, dismissed report, highlighting his precise descriptions that had been so cruelly ridiculed. Watching the press conference from his desolate, now empty office, Randall Cole saw his entire worldview, his carefully constructed career, and his reputation crumble before his eyes. The public outcry was immense. News outlets, having initially bought into his narrative, now condemned his suppression of scientific truth and his blatant disregard for a dedicated ranger. Social media exploded with calls for his resignation. The scientific community condemned his actions as anti-science and damaging to conservation efforts. The very institution he had sought to protect, the National Park Service, was now tainted by his arrogance and short-sightedness. Faced with overwhelming public pressure and immediate internal investigations, the Park Service issued a full public apology to Elias Vance, retracting his termination and offering him immediate reinstatement with honors, a Lifetime Achievement Award, and a new, specialized role. Elias Vance, once a pariah, now hailed as a visionary, a hero of science and conservation, stood utterly vindicated before the world. His quiet courage, his unwavering belief in the unseen, had not only saved his career but had unveiled the existence of a magnificent new species, now known to humanity, all thanks to his unbreakable spirit. The thunderous applause from the press conference, a sound that had echoed like a benediction, gradually faded into the background hum of a world forever changed. For Randall Cole, however, that sound was a death knell. His carefully constructed world, built on rigid protocols and an unshakable belief in his own infallible judgment, had not merely crumbled, it had been utterly obliterated. The media, which he had so deftly manipulated, now turned on him with a vengeful fury. News outlets that once lauded his administrative prowess now ran scathing headlines. Bureaucratic blindness cost humanity a discovery. Park Service chief fired ranger who found new species. The public outcry was immense, a cacophony of condemnation from scientists, environmentalists, and ordinary citizens alike. Petitions circulated online demanding his immediate dismissal and a full investigation into his conduct. The very institution he sought to protect, the National Park Service, was now tainted by his arrogance and short-sightedness. Facing overwhelming public pressure, internal investigations, and the quiet, damning contempt of his former colleagues, Cole had no choice. He quietly submitted his resignation, effective immediately, disappearing from the public eye as swiftly and decisively as he had once sought to control it. His career, once on a meteoric trajectory, was ruined. A stark cautionary tale of what happens when ego trumps truth. The downfall of the antagonist Type B was complete, a consequence of his own inflexibility and fear of the unknown. For Elias Vance, the world had flipped on its axis. The National Park Service, under new, more progressive leadership, didn't just retract his termination, they issued a full, unequivocal public apology. It was a formal, televised address from the director of the Park Service herself, acknowledging Elias's unwavering dedication to scientific truth and unparalleled observational skills. They didn't just offer him reinstatement, they created a new, prestigious role just for him, senior lead conservationist and research liaison for the newly designated Whispering Hollows Sanctuary. This vast, previously unmonitored section of Redwood National Park, once dismissed as merely dense wilderness, was now recognized as the sole known habitat of Luminaris sylvestris. Elias's input on conservation protocols, land management, and scientific exploration within the sanctuary was now paramount. His quiet expertise finally given the platform it deserved. This was the Park Service's realization of error, a profound systemic change born from Cole's disastrous misjudgment. Elias's life shifted from quiet isolation to a new kind of prominence. He remained the same humble, soft-spoken man, but his actions now carried immense weight. He continued to live in his rustic cabin, still finding solace in the deep woods. But his days were filled with purpose and meaningful collaboration. He worked tirelessly, now with unparalleled resources, alongside Dr. Lena Hansen. Lena, whose career had skyrocketed after the unveiling, received significant grant funding for her pioneering research into Luminaris sylvestris. They co-authored groundbreaking scientific papers, attended prestigious international conferences, and developed innovative non-invasive research methods to study the elusive creatures. Their relationship evolved from a skeptical, desperate alliance into a deep, mutual respect and an enduring friendship, bound by the monumental discovery they had shared. This was the meaningful opportunity for Elias, allowing him to pursue his passion for the wilderness and its mysteries with unprecedented recognition and resources, actively protecting the very wonders he helped unveil. Weeks, then months, settled into a new rhythm. The initial media frenzy surrounding Luminaris sylvestris had calmed, replaced by serious scientific inquiry and diligent conservation efforts. One crisp autumn evening, Elias and Lena found themselves deep within the newly established Whispering Hollows sanctuary, setting up remote, infrared cameras near a known feeding ground for the new species. The forest was hushed, peaceful, the only sounds the rustle of leaves and the distant murmur of a hidden stream. They shared a thermos of steaming coffee, the rich aroma mingling with the clean, earthy scent of the redwoods. "It's strange, isn't it?" Lena mused, her voice soft, breaking the comfortable silence as she looked up at the towering canopy. How quickly everything changed, from being labeled a crackpot, a Bigfoot hunter, to being hailed as a pioneer in cryptozoology, or rather, undiscovered species biology, as the academic circles now prefer to call it. She chuckled softly. Elias smiled faintly, his gaze fixed on the dense undergrowth, his mind already attuned to the subtle shifts in the evening air. "I never cared for the labels, Lena," he said, his voice quiet, resonating with a deep contentment. "Just the truth, and protecting what's here. I just knew. I knew what I saw was real, even when everyone else called me crazy." He shrugged, a gesture of humble acceptance. "You did," Lena affirmed, her voice filled with admiration. "You saw what others couldn't, Elias, because you knew how to truly look. You didn't just observe, you connected, and you had the courage to believe in what you saw, even when the entire world, and your own livelihood, stood against you." She paused, taking a slow sip of her coffee. "You teach me that every day, that sometimes science needs intuition and courage, as much as it needs data." Elias looked at her, his eyes reflecting the deep satisfaction of a man who had remained true to himself and had, in turn, been profoundly vindicated. "And you," he replied. "You gave me the tools, the scientific voice. We needed each other." Their quiet conversation reflected the new calm in Elias's life. The fear of judgment, the struggle for artistic and scientific validation, had been replaced by a profound sense of purpose, belonging, and an unshakable inner peace. He had not only survived the fire of professional scrutiny, but had emerged stronger, more authentic, and more deeply connected to his own truth. He was still Elias Vance, the quiet observer of the redwoods. But now, his observations were not just heard. They were valued, celebrated, and actively protected, safeguarding a newly unveiled wonder of the natural world for generations to come. 5 years later, the Whispering Hollows sanctuary was no longer just a protected zone. It was a testament to collaboration and the enduring power of humility. The Luminaris sylvestris, now affectionately known as the Forest Lights, had thrived under Elias's dedicated stewardship and Dr. Lena Hansen's rigorous scientific oversight. Their population, once thought to be impossibly rare, was slowly recovering, their ethereal glow a more frequent, comforting sight in the deep woods. The sanctuary itself had become a model for conservation, a living laboratory where groundbreaking research converged with an almost spiritual reverence for nature. Elias Vance, the quiet observer, had become a nationally recognized figure, Yet he retained his humble demeanor, his rustic cabin, still his sanctuary, now occasionally hosted esteemed scientists and eager young rangers seeking his counsel. He was no longer just a senior lead conservationist. He was a de facto patriarch of the forest lights, his insights invaluable to their understanding and protection. He led specialized research teams, using his unique observation skills to track and understand the Luminaris sylvestris' complex behaviors, their migration patterns, and their symbiotic relationship with the ancient redwoods. His intuitive understanding of the forest, once dismissed as eccentricity, was now celebrated as a rare gift, complementing Lena's scientific instruments perfectly. Beyond his direct work with the Luminaries, Elias had become a sought-after speaker at conservation summits and universities across the nation. His talks weren't polished academic lectures. They were quiet, heartfelt narratives, infused with the sounds and scents of the forest, advocating for a blend of scientific rigor and intuitive, long-term observation in ecological research. He often began by showing the blurry photograph that had cost him his job, then juxtaposed it with the crystal-clear footage of the thriving Luminaris, a powerful visual of vindication. "The greatest discoveries," he would often say, his voice resonating with deep conviction, "aren't always found under a microscope. Sometimes, they're found when you truly listen to the whispers of the wild, and when you have the courage to believe what your own eyes tell you, even when no one else does." To truly pay it forward, Elias had initiated the Silent Observer Program, a specialized citizen science fellowship. It was designed to train local volunteers, including several reformed park rangers who had once scoffed at his claims, now eager to learn from him, in his unique blend of meticulous scientific observation and intuitive ecological awareness. He taught them to recognize subtle anomalies, to track unseen patterns, and to develop a profound respect for the unknown. He instilled in them the importance of patience, of humility, and the courage to report observations that might defy conventional understanding. The program attracted individuals from all walks of life: retired teachers, avid hikers, young environmentalists, all drawn to Elias's wisdom and the allure of undiscovered wonders. These new silent observers contributed valuable data, expanding the understanding of the sanctuary and its inhabitants, carrying forward Elias's legacy of open-minded exploration. Dr. Lena Hansen's career, too, had skyrocketed. She was now the head of a major evolutionary biology department at the California Academy of Sciences, her research into Luminaris sylvestris publishing groundbreaking papers that reshaped ecological theories. She frequently collaborated with Elias, their partnership a celebrated model of interdisciplinary scientific discovery, proving that intuition and data could and should coexist. She often brought her advanced students to the sanctuary, allowing Elias to guide them, recognizing that his lived experience was as valuable as any textbook. One cool, crisp evening, 5 years after the fateful competition, Elias sat alone on a moss-covered log deep within the Whispering Hollows sanctuary. The air was still, pregnant with the earthy scents of ancient trees and damp soil. He had just finished checking a new set of remote sensors that monitored the Luminaris population. The sun had dipped below the western ridges, painting the sky in streaks of deep purple and fiery orange. Fading quickly into the twilight, he was not just observing, he was feeling the forest around him, the subtle currents of life flowing through it. He closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the symphony of the night, the rustle of unseen creatures, the distant hoot of an owl, the soft drip of water from the colossal canopy. When he opened them, the darkness was almost complete, save for the faint, ethereal glow that began to emerge from the deepest part of the forest ahead. It was the soft, mesmerizing light of the Luminaris sylvestris, a cluster of them, their iridescent forms shimmering, moved silently through the ancient trees, their internal glow pulsing in a mesmerizing rhythm. They were healthy, thriving, a vibrant testament to nature's enduring mysteries and the power of human courage. Elias watched them, a profound sense of peace settling over him. He was no longer battling skepticism or fighting for his job. He was simply present, a guardian of the extraordinary, a silent witness to the wonders of a world still full of undiscovered magic. This final image, the gentle, otherworldly glow of the Luminaris Silvestris moving freely through their protected sanctuary, with Elias, their quiet champion, observing them, encapsulated the story's theme, the profound vindication of truth, the flourishing of hidden beauty, and the enduring legacy of one man's unwavering belief in the unbelievable. The Luminaries shone brightly, a symbol of hope, not just for a new species, but for the countless wonders yet to be discovered by those brave enough to truly look. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming stories.